Welcome to AFrame Lesson 3.2. In this video, we're going to explore how to control animations by interacting with our objects. In doing so, we're going to add flags, which are just variables to our objects so that we can later check to see if the object should be animated or not. So let's get to it. So just as a little review of what we have so far, we have a box on the screen, we've grabbed it, and through the use of our recursive loop, which increases the value of r by some delta, which in this case is 1, we slowly increase the value of r, and then we set the y rotation of this box to that value of r, which causes it to rotate. So what we want to be able to do is to not have the box rotate all the time, but only rotate when we put our mouse over it. And then we take our mouse off of it, it should stop rotating. So in order to do that, we have to add event listeners to our box. So let's do that real quick. And we will use the mouse enter. And if you recall, we have to create a callback function, a function to handle what should happen when the event is triggered. Just as a little review, I'm going to do a console log of the word this, just to show you how that word this is important. All right, so let's go view it over here. And when I enter into the box, we can see here we get the A-frame component back. Okay, so now that we have our interaction with the box, we need a way to control the animation that's happening down here. And right now it's just free-flowing. There's nothing stopping it. So what we need to do here is to somehow control whether the animation should be happening or not. So if you're thinking an if statement, you are absolutely correct. We need an if statement here. So let's add it. And for right now, I'm just going to set it up to be false, just so we can see that we do have a way of controlling the animation. So you can see here it's no longer animating because the value inside the if statement is false. We're going to want to replace that with some kind of variable, and that's what we're going to do in this next step. So when we put our mouse over our box, I want to dynamically add a variable to our box. So this variable doesn't exist in our box. So we're going to add the variable to our box. Again, this is something that can't happen in some other languages such as Java, but in scripting languages, this is allowed to dynamically add things to our objects. And let's simply set this equal to true. Okay, now I want you to recall the word this is making reference to my box. So when I go down to my if statement, what I can do is simply check the value of my box.rotate. I know in here you might think, well, we use this.rotate here. That's because we're inside of this callback function. But again, if you remember, the word this refers to my box, and my box is available on the outside of this little callback function. All right, so let's give this a try. All right, so you can see here right now, the box is not rotating. I'm going to put my mouse into it, and we can see that it started rotating. Now we're going to take our mouse off of it. Well, I should say not the mouse, but the cursor off of it. Notice it's still rotating. It's still rotating because the value of rotate was set to true, and it was never taken off. So in order for us to do that, we have to introduce another event listener, which is the mouse leave. And now we'll simply set this to false. And let me also change this up. I don't know if you noticed, there was a little bit of jerkiness. So I'm going to set the initial rotation of the box to 45 because if I recall, that is the initial rotation of the box in the HTML. So let's go back over here. Let's run this again. So I want you to follow the steps now. I'm going to put my mouse over the box. So that's going to activate this mouse enter event listener, which then triggers the function callback that sets this dot rotate, or in other words, my box dot rotate to true. Because again, and the proof of that is look at the if statement down here. The if statement doesn't have the word this, it has the word my box dot rotate. Again, recall the word this refers to my box. Because again, it's inside of this callback function, which is inside of this event listener. All right, so now let's see what happens when we take our mouse off of it. Now, if everything works out correctly, when we take our mouse off of the box, we should change the value of this dot rotate, which again refers to the box, to false. And if that becomes false, that means that this is false, which means it shouldn't rotate anymore. So let's see. And there you go. Put our mouse on, it rotates. Take our mouse off, it stops rotating. Now, in this particular example, we're only dealing with rotation, but honestly, you can pretty much do everything else. And the other thing to note too, you don't necessarily have to stop an animation. So let's say you wanted to have an animation that when you put your mouse on something or possibly click on something, then it starts to move on its own and it just continues moving on its own. Again, you can do that. So I don't want you to think that this always has to happen in pairs. It really all stems from the scenario that you want to accomplish. So let's go back to our presentation and let's review what we've done. So in this video, we saw how we can take event listeners and the use of flags to control animations. So hopefully you're excited about what you can do in your virtual worlds, and enjoy.